My dear students, I welcome you to my class. I am very pleased because you have attended the class, even if you are fasting. So it's really difficult to attend a class during the month of Ramadan while all of you, I think, are fasting. But I think it's our bounden duty to learn, because without learning, no practice, no work, or no enterprise can be systematically accomplished. So we want to learn more. We want to learn new things. We want to make ourselves fit for the job market. So dear students, I just like to remind you of our last class. In the last class, we learned some techniques of analyzing a speech. And you know that a speech is a kind of therapeutic. If you diagnose a speech of a person, you can understand the person's personality. You can also judge the person. You can have an impression about that very person. So I think it's a very crucial topic, speech analysis. And in the last class, we learned some techniques of speech analysis. And today, we will learn the applied functions of those rules. That is how we can apply those rules and rubrics that we have learned. So I like to take you to the screen. Is the screen visible to you? Would you please assure me that you can see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we find some informations here that we learned in the last class. Speech analysis, for example, some particular things are to be considered while analyzing a speech. I am just repeating all these informations for stimulating your knowledge about this very particular lesson. And very soon I will switch to our today's lesson. That is the practice of analyzing the speech. So anyway, to analyze a speech, we have to consider the purpose of the speech, the target audience, the structure of the speech, content, the ways of delivery, and effectiveness or the impact of the speech, the message that the speaker intends to convey to his audience. That is also to be found out while analyzing a speech. Then rhetorical devices. And last of all, the overall impact of the speech upon the audience. So these are the basic elements that we have to consider during a speech analysis. In the last class, we learned in detail these very things. In the last class, we learned. And today we will at first have a very close reading of Abraham Lincoln's speech. The title of the speech is Gettysburg Address. I think you can now see it on the screen, Gettysburg Address. So we will read it very minutely. And then we will analyze it. So let's read this speech at first. I like to share only a few informations about the context of this text. That is the background. Abraham Lincoln was the president at that time. He came to power in 1861. And unfortunately, in 1864, he was assassinated. That is, he was shot down dead. And during his regime, he found a very things fall apart like situation in his country, that is United States of America. Because the Afro-Americans, that is the Black Americans, wanted to have their equal share of the economy. They also started movement for freedom from slavery. You know, slavery is a very inhuman practice. The Black Africans were captivated by the white Europeans and Americans, and they were made slaves, and different forms of tortures were inflicted upon these slaves. They were not considered to be human beings. They were so tortured, so inhumanly and cruelly tortured that it is said, even today it's believed that at that time, a slave could not usually survive more than 5 years. That is, within 5 years, he or she died because of overwork, because of physical torture that they received from their masters, because of starvation, malnutrition, different forms of diseases. As they were forced to live in unhealthy environment, they were not given nutritious food, and they had to work in very hazardous environment and risky jobs they had to do that the white men did not dare do. So just think, that was the condition of the Black Americans. They were not given any access in the mainstream of economy of the country. They were not considered to be human beings. They were considered to be quite inhuman or non-human beings or subhuman beings. They were not complete in their eyes, in the eyes of the white masters. The Black people were not complete human beings. They were incomplete human beings. And if they needed to be complete, they must depend on their white masters. They must serve their white masters. They would teach them civilization, discipline, manners, education, etc., etc. And after receiving all these things from the white people, they would be civilized, or they would be complete. That was the discourse of the white people about the Black people at that time. But the Black people developed consciousness. The Black people developed consciousness gradually. It was not an overnight incident. It was a gradual process. That is, the Black people developed consciousness about their rights, human rights. So they started their resistance. On the other hand, the white masters forced the Black people to serve them. So there was a clash, inevitable clash. The whole country was a kind of pandemonium, a hell. And many Black slaves fled away from their master's house. and the masters somehow managed to captivate them again and punished them brutally, cruelly. Sometimes their body was dismembered. For example, the leg or the hands were cut off from their body. So that was the treatment of the white people towards the black people. And the black people wanted freedom. Abraham Lincoln also wanted that the black people should have freedom. So if you think of this very particular mentality of this great president of the United States of America, you must call him noble, you must call him great, you must call him magnanimous, generous, philosopher, and humane. Anyway, there was civil war. That is, a war was going on between the black and the white. And Abraham Lincoln wanted to stop this civil war. He wanted to concentrate on the overall development of the country. If a nation is divided between two sections or segments, black and white, if a country is always inflicted by different kinds of violences or different kinds of inhuman activities, then that very country must not go ahead. That was a very appropriate realization of Abraham Lincoln. And for that reason, he wanted to bring about an end to this situation. So on 19th November 1863, he went to Pennsylvania, and there was a place named Gettysburg, and there was a graveyard. There is many soldiers who sacrificed their lives during the Civil War. These soldiers' dead bodies were buried in the graveyard at Gettysburg of Pennsylvania. And Abraham Lincoln went there from Washington by a train. He traveled by train. And on that very day, that is 19th November 1863, he felt feverish. He felt feverish, that is, he did not feel okay. And only 1 or 2 days later, he was infected by measles. As he was not feeling very well, so getting down from the train, he delivered a speech. This is the speech. So just look at this speech. It's a very small, very concise, very aphoristic speech. A speech of only 272 words. Only 272 words. But this very speech is very, very significant and impactful, effective. So how? Because in this very speech, Abraham Lincoln reminds the Americans of their history. He also reminds the Americans of their duties and responsibility. He reminds his people, that is his audience, of the form of government of America, that is democratic form of government of the people, by the people, for the people. And he also made a contrast between the past and the present, what our ancestors did and what we are doing. That was his point. And by making this contrast, he just tried to draw the attention of the Americans to their commitment to the history. So just think how all these aspects have been packed into a single speech of 272 words. This is really an amazing speech. It is really difficult to be concise while you write or while you speak. It's a difficult job to be concise, to be very aphoristic during your speech or while you write. It's a very difficult job. But look at this speech. Abraham Lincoln could accomplish this very particular expertise. Uh, let's read this very speech. And I do ask any of you to recite this speech. I do ask any of you, please. You may read from the screen. I do request any of you to read this speech. Will you please read this speech? Who will read this speech? Mr. Walid, can you read this speech?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please read out. We all are listening to you. Please.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liability and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived, so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have came to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is together, all together, fighting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot uh, consecrate, consecrate, we cannot hallow the ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled there, who consecrated it far above our poor power to add the de- uh, detract. The world will little know, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who thought, thought here have us far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us that from those honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that those dead shall not have dead in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom and the government of the people by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Okay, thank you very much for your close reading of this text. So I think you have got the point. Uh, what are the things about which Abraham Lincoln speaks here in this speech? I am reading it for your sake, and I do ask you, everybody here in my class, to read a text with appropriate accent and pronunciation. while reading a text, you must not impose your own accent, that is, your mother language's accent upon that accent upon the language of a different nation. So anyway, let me recite it for your sake. And then I will start analyzing this text. Four-score. Score means 20 years. 20. Score means 20. Four-score means 4 into 20, 80. And 7. So 80 plus 7, 87 years ago. You know that America won freedom from British colonization in 1776. You know it very well, I believe. In 1776, America won freedom from British colonization. And this speech is delivered in 1863. So it is 87 years later. That's why he has used this term, post-co and 70 years ago. So just think of the rhetorical technique or device. We, the ordinary people, might have said 87 years ago. But Abraham Lincoln says post-co and 70 years ago. This is called poetic quality. Okay? So while reciting a text, mark these techniques. You have to think of the diction, choice of words, use of rhetorical devices, that is, figures of speech. You have to think of the use of different other techniques that are usually borrowed from melody of music, of language, rhythmic quality. Then you have to think of how the speaker puts emphasis on what he says. You have to think of the use of tricolon, that is 3 consecutive sentences or successive sentences, to put emphasis on the essence of the speech. So these are some of the things that you have to think of during a speech analysis. Besides, you have to think of the use of but, B-U-T, but. But means contrast. Whether the speaker is making contrast or not, and why is he making contrast? What's his purpose behind this contrast? So I think you have to think of all these things. Not only that, while analyzing a speech, you have to think of the context, the historicity of the text. Why does the writer or why does the speaker say so? Or why does the speaker speak like this? Or what incidents the speaker is speaking about? And how are these incidents relevant to the present time? And how these incidents are relevant to the past? And how these incidents are relevant to the future? So just think of the bridging between future and the past. So how is the speaker doing this bridging? You have to think of this. So I think if you are a critical reader, these points will not escape your observation. So anyway, let's read. Post-co and 70 years ago, our fathers means our ancestors, our forefathers, আমাদের পূর্বপুরুষ brought forth on this continent. Continent means American continent, United States of America, a new nation. That is in 1776. Our ancestors achieved freedom from British colonial power. Our country became an independent country. our continent won freedom in 1776. Conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition. Proposition means proposal, that all men are created equal. So just think how powerfully Abraham Lincoln can speak. He wants that all the people, all the diverse people of that very continent should come together. They should stand on a singular platform of brotherhood and sisterhood. And it's a very great and crucial job of a leader to unify or to unite diversities. And here we find that very uniqueness of Abraham Lincoln's sincerity to bring all diverse people to the platform of brotherhood and sisterhood. He believes in Americanism. He does not believe in white. He does not believe in black. He believes in Americanism. That is, all the people living in this country are Americans. They may be black, they may be white, but they are Americans. For example, in our country, we live together very peacefully. We are Muslims, we are Hindus, we are Buddhists, we are Christians, but we are Bangladeshis. We have Bangladeshi nationalism. We may be Muslims, we may be Hindus, we may be Christians, we may be Buddhists, we may be ethnic peoples. For example, Chakma, Tipra, Chautal, etc. So all these people inherit Bangladeshi nationalism. So we are Bangladeshis. This is our first and foremost identity. Then we are identified by our religious ideologies. So I think this is the greatness of Abraham Lincoln, that he reminds his audience of the spirit of freedom which worked during the struggle of the Americans and which led the Americans to freedom in 1776. Now we are engaged in a great civil war. So just think, in the first segment of his speech, Abraham Lincoln draws the attention of his audience to the history of America, to the noble spirit of freedom of America. Just come to the second segment. In the second segment, Abraham Lincoln becomes critical. He criticizes the deviation of the Americans from the spirit of nationalism to the spirit of division, to the spirit of racism, to the spirit of racial discrimination. Okay? So he is criticizing this deviation. And just look at his language. The language of criticism is also poetic, and it's full of sympathy. If your criticism is sympathetic, then you are a great leader. If your criticism is dry and saturated with personal biases, then you cannot be a great leader. You can be a self-declared leader, but you will not be called leader by the people. And Abraham Lincoln knows it very well. So he says that we are engaged in a great civil war. He does not say you are engaged. Actually, he belongs to all these people, and all these people belong to him. Just think how he incorporates the spirit of belongingness into his people. This is another unique quality of a leader. He might have said, "You are engaged in a great civil war," but he did not use the pronoun "you." He uses the pronoun "we." We are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, that is the nation which was conceived on the basis of the spirit of equality, on the basis of the spirit of freedom, on the basis of the spirit of racial indiscrimination. So that very spirit which glorified the nation during its birth is not now wanting. It seems we are now testing that very spirit which led us to our freedom 87 years ago. So he says that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate our portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that nation might live. It's altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. So we are fighting nonsensically. We are fighting, and at the same time, we are making our great leader's glory insignificant. We are fighting on the earth, on the land, on which our great forefathers shed their blood to attain or to achieve freedom. So this does not go, that is, you're fighting, your poor, your discriminatory behavior do not go with the spirit of our nation. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. So just think how generously he glorifies the great martyrs of America. Those who struggled, sacrificed their lives for the freedom of the country. They were brave people. They died physically, but they are still alive in our memory. We who are living now may not live in the memories of the people, but those who are dead, who sacrificed their lives for this country, are still alive. They are still fresh in our memory. So just think how he makes a contrast between the past and the present, between the dead and the living, or between the ancestors and the present generation. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It's for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus are so nobly advanced. So our duty is not to fight. Our duty is not to shed the blood of our people. Our duty is to carry on the responsibilities, the tasks, the enterprises of our ancestors who could not finish. They started the mission, but unfortunately, they died. So now who are living now have got the responsibility to carry on the task, the enterprises of the ancestors. It's rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take the increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that this dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. That is, we must not do anything that tells upon our freedom. We must not do anything that forfeits the glory of our ancestors. So we have to resolve. Resolve means promise. We have to make commitment that whatever we do, whatever we think, or whatever we speak about must be dedicated to the progress, to the development of our nation. And he also defines the nature, the type of American government. He says that the government of the people. He does never say that my government. Okay, if you look around, you will hear this kind of speech: my government, my power, my administration, my people. It is really unfortunate. Actually, we are not learning. We are learning to become hooligans or bastans or Muslim. But unfortunately, we are learning to become human beings. So be human. So he defines the government which ensures the participation of everybody. That is, my government is also your government. You have the participation in my government. So it is your government. So just think how he makes the citizens inspired, or how he makes his citizens think that they are an inevitable ingredient of the government. And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. That is, if we want to eternalize democracy, if we want to make our democracy permanent on this land, we have to do our duties sincerely. We have to carry on the responsibilities and enterprises of our ancestors. We have to celebrate brotherhood, not hostility. We have to celebrate unity, not discrimination. We have to accommodate everybody. We must not alienate anybody. America is a country of everybody. America is a country of the black. America is the country of the white. America is the country of the red Indians. America is the country of the hippies. America is the country of different ethnic groups of people. And if we can have this spirit, then we will be really an exemplary nation to the world. The world will take us as an example. So just think how this great leader, Abraham Lincoln, affectionately defines his nation, defines his government, and declares the participation of the people to his government, to his country. And just think how briefly he speaks, and how effectively he speaks, how rhetorically he speaks. His language is utterly poetic. This is called poetic language. and he reflects on almost every aspect of the country which are to be addressed during this crucial time of civil war of the country. And he also accommodates everybody. He does never use you. He uses the word we. That is, your problem is our problem. Your dream is our dream. Your destination is our destination. Your progress is our progress. So just think, this is called a great leader. How greatly, how generously, how magnanimously he speaks. Now, dear students, I like to draw your attention to this very part of our today's lecture. This is analytical part. I think you can see Abraham Lincoln here. Now, come to this slide. Come to this segment. First, it's important to remember the context. So what things should you consider while analyzing my speech? First, it's important to remember the context. Context means background. America was in the midst of bloody civil war. Union troops had only recently defeated Confederate troops at the Battle of Gettysburg. It was the turning point in the war. The stated purpose of Lincoln's speech was to dedicate a plot of land that would become soldiers' national cemetery. However, Lincoln realized that he also had to inspire the people to continue the fight. This is not the fight for bloodshed. This is the fight for developing the country. So, first of all, you have to think of the context. Okay? So, while you are analyzing our text, at first you have to reflect on the context of that very speech. So, try to know the context. And you may give examples or you may give quotations from the speech. For example, the quotation is here. 70 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Then the next point that you have to think of, poetic quality. Just think of the poetic quality, whether the speech is poetic or not. You have to put emphasis on this particular aspect while analyzing the speech. So 7 is much more poetic, much more elegant, much more noble than 87. We, the ordinary people, might have said 87 years ago, our country attained freedom. But Abraham Lincoln, who is extraordinary, has used this poetic term, 7 years. So this is the second point that you have to think of, all right? The first point is context. The second point is poetic quality. Now come to the next point, contrast. This is the third point. That is how Abraham Lincoln makes contrast between the past and the present. Contrast is essential to make your speech effective, number one. Number two, contrast is essential to sustain the attention of the audience. The audience will feel, oh, we are in our wrong way. We have to go back to our right way. So that kind of realization will keep working inside the minds of your audience if you make successfully, if you make contrast. So contrast is an important part of my speech. You have to focus on this part, and you may give examples. You may quote from the speech while explaining this very particular point. Okay. For example, here we find the quotation, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this land, this ground. So, but is here a conjunction which refers to the contrast. Okay. Now come to the next point. Tricolon, use of tricolon. So what is tricolon? I like to define it. Don't get nervous. I will define it very simply. Tricolon means the repetition of some pronouns or of some words in three successive sentences. For example, just think we have found here an example. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow. So we cannot. Just look. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. Okay. So just think of the repetition. We cannot. We, the ordinary people, might have said, we cannot dedicate, consecrate, and hallow. But as a great speaker, as a great leader, he knows the psychology of his audience. He knows the art of making his speech direct, catchy. So he has used this tricolon. So tricolon means the repetition of some common parts of a sentence in three successive sentences. So we find here tricolon. And this use of tricolon has made this speech more effective. And then think of the rhythmic quality, rhythm, whether the speech is rhythmic or not. Many people speak. But all the people cannot speak musically, rhythmically. If your speech is rhythmic, then your audience will enjoy it. So just think of this sentence, the brave men living and dead, the brave men living and dead. So how concise and rhetorical this sentence is. The brave men living and dead. Who struggled here have consecrated it far above our power to add or detract. So just think of this, think of the structure or syntax of this sentence. This is not an ordinary syntax, or you cannot grammatically produce this kind of rhythmic sentence. If you want to produce this kind of sentence, you have to apply some rhetorical devices that we find here. Now come to the next point, eloquence. Eloquence. Eloquence means the spontaneity of your speaking, the fluency of your speaking, the power of your speaking. Eloquence. Abraham Lincoln does not use crutch words. Crutch words means different mannerisms. For example, very often we the teachers ask or try to draw your attention during our lecture with some crutch words. For example, understand, you know, understand, 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 you know, you know, you know. These are the words that we repeatedly use during our lecture. These words are called crutch words. Crutch words actually make your speech less speedy. Crutch words hamper the flow of your speech. Crutch words may also irritate your audience. Your audience might lose their attention or concentration. So try to avoid crutch words during your speech. So we find the eloquence here. And while speaking, use of prosody, use of rhetorics and prosody. Okay. Use of rhetorics and prosody. Rhetorics means the figures of speech, ornaments of language. The ornaments, if you put on ornament, you may look more beautiful. So ornaments are usually used to beautify language. Okay. So rhetoric or rhetorical devices are used to beautify language. And prosody, elements from prosody are used to make language musical. Abraham Lincoln uses alliteration. Alliteration means repetition of consonant sound. What is alliteration? Alliteration means repetition of consonant sound. Repetition of consonant sound. Repeating consonant sound. Okay, you will find this repeating consonant sounds in here to make the speech more rhythmic, melodious. And then come here, another point is mentioned here, double contrast. I will not write here the word contrast because I have already discussed it. Contrast, use of contrast. Okay. For example, the world will little know it, nor long remember. So just think, two ideas are incorporated into a single expression. What we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. This is called double contrast. And then appeal. Appeal is very, very, very important. Appeal means how the speech draws your attention. How the speech draws your attention. Appeal. Suppose you speak, but you can't draw the attention of your audience. Then your speech will be a failure. Your speech should have an impact upon your audience. That is called appeal, how it draws the attention of your audience. And you will find lots of examples here. The final two sentences of the address sound a call to action. So he's inviting his people to come and continue the unfinished work of the ancestors. He is also inspiring the people. He gives the people a sense of belonging. So in this way, Abraham Lincoln finished the speech with the use of tricolor. That is, of the people, by the people, for the people. The government of the people, by the people, for the people. That is, three consecutive ideas are put side by side. So I think you have got the points and you have learned how to analyze my speech. This is only a simple example. We will learn more in our next classes. So I do request you to learn all these things minutely and try to practice. I do request you to collect my speech from internet, the speech of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King. I have a dream. You will write, I have a dream text in Google, and then you will find that text. So try to read this text and analyze it. Okay, during this vacation, you can exercise your brain and keep yourself engaged in this kind of job during this vacation. So this is all about our today's lecture. Now I invite questions. If you have any question or if you have any review or observations, please let me know.